Hello.
Whoa.
Happy Monday.
Hi. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday, journeyers.
And happy
Oh,
Monday, Shannon.
oh, you know what? This is what's happening. I was hearing an echo. I was like, what is that? But I was watching us on a different channel. I was like, what's happening? Why is it doubling like that? Anyway, it's us. It's me. It's Shannon Stott and Emily Arnold Fleming.
We
And
are
we're
here to party and chat and have a good time.
yeah, talking our topic is reliability.
Yeah, it sure
I have
is.
I have things for you. I
You
have this.
always have a wonderful topic for us. So, how do you make room? Ooh, how do we make room for the unreliable? And how does improv prepare us for it? I love it.
I I feel like Emily.
Mhm.
I feel like all improv is the unreliable.
Yeah, it's
That's
like
what
the
people
the
think.
one thing you can be sure of, like that you can
Yes,
reliably be sure that this will be totally unreliable. Well, like,
it's
and I think,
unreliable.
and I think in that way, and this is kind of what we say a lot to people when they say like, "Oh, I could never improvise," that life is also fairly unreliable. I like to say that like life is chaos, and
Hmm.
so we are constantly improvising in our life. And so as we say, I think you and I both say the same things to people when we're like, "You're improvising this conversation right now."
Right, right. It's so interesting because we get really stuck isn't the right word, but we rely on things being uh, not as chaotic. We have this thing in our mind where, okay, I know what it looks like to get up in the morning, do my morning routine, go to work, go to the gym, pick up my child, whatever the thing is that you are regularly doing from moment to moment. And then what happens is we get in a car accident, or there's a snow day, or whatever, we get sick, what we can't somehow do the thing that is reliable, the
Mhm.
consistency or the routine that we have come to rely on is no longer for some moments reliable. It's no longer there. And I feel like what ends up happening is our day, our life, our moment is completely ruined.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And I
can
don't
be.
like
It
that.
can because it's so hard. It's so hard when like you're expecting these things and all of a sudden it doesn't happen. I
Hmm.
And so I find when we're able to be a little bit more flexible with our routines, right? And kind of have the knowledge that, things could go wrong, have like some wiggle room baked in, then our days tend to be less ruined.
Right, right. And that doesn't necessarily mean, because as I'm looking at this question, how do you make room for the unreliable? I think that there is a swing. The pendulum can swing, where you're in your bed and you're like, great. Tomorrow, anything could happen. Tornado could hit. What would I do in that situation? Okay, a dog could bite me. What would I do in that situation? You're like,
So the problem, Shannon, is that is my brain. that that's like the narration. That's a monologue of an anxious brain. And you're right, that swings too far, right? If you're spending all your time thinking about the what ifs or
Mhm.
the like things that could happen to ruin your day, then that can distract you from the here and now, or preparing for things that are actually likely to happen.
it's, it can get really it can get intense in your head.
Mhm.
So, okay, so if let's talk about your brain. I like talking about your brain. So, if this is a thing, because a lot of people, I mean, there's billions of people on this planet, and so we've got tons and billions of different types of inner workings of brains,
Mhm.
and if it's causing anxiety, if it's causing anxiety to sit and think about a tornado coming through, a dog biting me, a pool could suddenly flood my kitchen. Like, I don't know. I think
I thought you were gonna say something like a pool could suddenly just appear.
up here, it could happen. What are some things, improv techniques? What are some ways improv is helping
Mm.
you think through those things or deal with that anxiety?
Well, I think there's a lot of there's a confidence in like knowing
Mm-hmm.
that we have the strength to navigate through the unexpected, right? That when because we practice in improvisation, failing, and how failing isn't the end of the world, but can also often lead to like new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Through that, you kind of build some confidence that like, oh, even if things aren't right, I know how to. I have the self confidence to kind of navigate through things, and my life won't be over just because
Right.
that thing happened. I think that's a big one. More recently, and I think this is more of kind of like an act thing. A little bit of improv is noticing in the present moment what's going on in your body and your brain, and being able to say to yourself, if you're in an anxious spiral, being able to say to yourself, I'm recognizing that I'm having these thoughts. They're just thoughts. Like, it's just a thought, can't hurt me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Um, I'm not entirely sure what the improv equivalent of that is, besides maybe the rule of like, if you don't say it with your out loud voice, it's not
It's
actually
not
happening.
happening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I would say that the improv equivalent of that is listening, right? We
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about listening to our partners, and sometimes you're on stage by yourself. Maybe there isn't someone speaking to you, but when we are listening and awareness, I'm equating those two things. You said being aware that these are just thoughts, and then listening on stage would be the equivalent of that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what have I set up, if anything, listening to myself, and what has anyone else set up listening to my partners? And that will, and how do I respond to just that? How do I
Mm-hmm.
respond to just that, instead of thinking about two steps ahead of that? Oh, well, you said, oh, look at these beautiful vines. Obviously, we're in a fairy tale. We're in a fairy tale. And I'm Rapunzel. Okay, I'm Rapunzel. And like you said, if you haven't said any of those, I'm in a fairy tale, I'm Rapunzel, if you haven't said any of those things, no one knows, they aren't true yet. So look at these beautiful vines. Respond, oh, I'm listening. Vines. Oh. And then saying whatever it is. But
Right, because if you hold on to those things on an improv stage, if you like create this narrative in your brain that you're Rapunzel, but you have built a pulley system to get yourself down and you don't need anyone to come and save you, and you've built all that in your head and you haven't said it, that gives the opportunity for one of your teammates to come in and say something maybe completely different and antithetical. Maybe they call you Snow White. Maybe
mm-hmm,
uh maybe they don't reference fairy tales at all. Maybe they're like, we're
right,
in the jungle.
right.
Uh and if you have just been stuck in this whole thing and then someone presents something totally different, man, you're screwed. You gotta pivot.
You've got to pivot so hard, and it takes you out of, it can make you really angry and upset. It really can jar you and where you are, or where you think you are in your scene. But if you're agile, right? If you're agile and you respond to just the little tiny bit, what do I do in this moment now?
Mhm.
Now we can back and forth. We can play this tennis match of, okay, you give me a little bit, I give a little bit. You give a little bit, I give a little bit. And that happens, it's the same back and forth that happens in our lives, right?
Mhm.
I wake up, oh, I wasn't expecting this crick in my neck. Cool. I'm going to pivot just a little bit. I'm going to take 5 minutes to do some stretches, or I'm going to take, some Advil. Where
Yeah,
I
I
wouldn't.
put on I mean, relatedly, I planned on going to work today and walking around and doing all sorts of stuff, and I still did, but I woke up, my hip's been sticky,
Mm,
um, and so for the first time in about a year, I was like, "Alright, I gotta put my hip brace back on." Didn't fit into it when I was pregnant, had a whole oth that's a whole other it's a whole other thing, but, uh, could put it back on now,
mhm,
um, to get through the day, so just a slight pivot,
mhm,
uh, and, trying to be more cognizant of when I'm moving around, and that's when we're thinking about making room for the unreliable is important because that pivoting is so important.
mhm.
The being able to pivot and be like, "Okay, that's just a little different. That's okay. We still got I can still do everything else. It's just a little bit of a difference," and catching it early. If
Absolutely.
we if I hadn't, right? If I had woken up with pain in my hip and I was like, "This isn't here. I don't have time for this. I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to work." That would have made it worse, right?
Yes.
It would just
Yes.
build up, and I would be just miserable and in so much pain.
Ooh, you know what that makes me think of is when we hear things on stage and they don't make sense to us and we ignore them,
Yeah.
right? Like an offer is made, look at these vines, and you're like, oh, in your head, obviously, where it can, what did it, why are the vines there? We were just talking about tea time, blah, 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 blah. And we just ignore. Now this thing is there. The vines still remain. They remain to the audience, they remain to your partners. There's still vines there because they've been introduced. Your ignoring of them doesn't change the
Doesn't
fact.
make him go away, and your partner might be like, "And also, there are flowers on the vines," and meanwhile, you're, like, off baking a cake or whatever, and they're like, "And look at this, there's an iguana climbing the vine,"
And
and
so
making the
this
problem worse.
worse. Yes. So this, like, how do you make room? This making room for the unreliable. The shift is, you were talking about awareness, but yeah, that pivot is really important. Just yes, I am aware of these vines. I'm aware of my hip, and I'm going to take a step towards addressing it.
Mhm,
And ooh, 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 and I'm going to be conscious and accepting of the whatever consequences come from taking a step, right?
mhm,
Because I
mhm.
wonder, Emily, you said, okay, I'm gonna, my hip hurts, I'm gonna put on my brace. And I feel like there's a lot of things that happen. I'm just going to throw things out. Okay, well, putting on my brace is going to take 5 extra minutes. I might be late. Putting on my brace is going to make me feel weak or sad or something, guilty of something about my body. Putting on my brace, la 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 la. You could think about all of those things and just be overwhelmed, or you can just say there will be some sort of consequence. Consequence sounds negative, but something, I'm making an offer, putting on my brace. The world is going to make an offer. I don't know what that offer is going to be, but if we can be accepting of what that offer is going to be,
Mhm.
then we maybe don't have to struggle so hard about, like, internally about the decisions that we are making, as we move forward throughout the day.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of where we get into when we think about the words acceptance and the
Mm,
phrase "yes, and," this
mm-hmm.
is where we get into the part where, neither of those are "hooray and," right?
Ooh.
Uh, when we're talking about acceptance and yesing the things in our environment, it really just means acknowledging that they're true,
Yes. Yes.
not
Yeah.
that we love them.
Right. This is so good. Because we're going back to like the car accident. We don't, we're not asking, Emily and I aren't asking you to be like, yay, a
Yay!
car accident. Like, we don't, that's not it. But when we, when we are in the collision or whatever it is, and we can say, okay, this is going to, I'm, I don't know what comes next. All I know is I have to get out of my car, hopefully, get out of my car and get this license plate, get out of my car, grab my insurance, whatever it is. And this is going to cause some repercussions down the road, some stuff down in my day. And that's okay. That's okay. And
Yeah, it sucks, but it's okay. It's
right.
okay for things to suck.
It's okay.
Write it down. Write
I
it down.
like
Do that thing where you like take some like some kind of window marker and put it on your mirror that it's okay for things to suck.
it's okay for things to suck. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
so it's so
Because can you imagine a world where like if you imagined a world where nothing sucked? Uh, first of all, that's not possible.
yeah.
And second of all, that that's boring.
It is.
It's like
Like
it's like the moral of Inside Out, right? Like if you
right.
don't have sadness, then the joy isn't as great.
Yeah. Yes. It's okay for things to suck. There's so much there. I'm thinking about on stage when things suck. What does it look like? And I think some one way it looks is when you are confused, right?
Mhm.
You the improviser are confused as to where this story is going. You don't know really what your character is or what your relationship is. And sometimes you'll see, if you're watching an improv show, you'll see people really struggle and be
Mhm.
super frustrated, and the whole team is like in this melee of suck, and they
Yeah.
all feel like it sucks. But if we take this mentality, it's okay for things to suck, we can then, all right, this sucks right now. What do I have to do? What questions do I have to ask?
Mhm.
What direction do I have to turn? What stake can I put in the ground so I can really know where we are? What offer can I make? And these types of things can help us in the moment ground our scenes so that we don't. I'm not looking at Emily like, do you know where we are? And Emily's like, I don't know where we are. And I guess we'll just have to suck through this together. Like, you don't have to do that.
Although now I'm imagining that as a scene, because even that making the strong choice to say with our out loud voices, I don't know where we are.
I have
There,
zero clue what's happening.
there is a great a great thing because you're still like latching onto a thing because you're naming it
You're naming
uh
it.
is
Mm-hmm.
also is delightful.
Yes, and you can do that.
Mhm.
How does improv in this, like, how does improv prepare us for it, for the unreliable? It also teaches us that it is okay to name the thing. It's okay to, on stage specifically, to say, like, hey, Emily, I know you and I are both Smurfs here. I know that for sure. But are you Papa Smurf? I'm so confused. And then
There
Emily
are
could
so
say,
many Smurfs,
so many
and
Smurfs. And
and I
we can
know
have
you
that.
have an encyclopedic knowledge of Smurfs, but I only know three. So
So can we?
are
And
we
you can.
all Smurfette now?
We're all of this conversation can take place between the improvisers,
Yeah.
right? And
And it's okay
this,
for that to be explicit. Like there's no rule that says you don't have to talk about you're not allowed to talk about yourself as an improviser during during a scene.
this, this. So in the how do you make room for the unreliable? you're not, and there's no rule that says you're not allowed to name it or you're not allowed to talk about like what's happening at,
Mhm.
like, talk to another improviser.
Mhm.
Makes me think about the many ways that we hide what's happening in our lives
Ooh.
for embarrassed, because we're embarrassed, or because I don't know. There are just so many situations in which something is happening and you're not telling anyone, and now
Mhm.
you're becoming, you feel like you're unreliable, you feel like the outside of you is unreliable, but it's because we're not speaking, right? We're not giving people all the information.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all ever, I mean, I'm sure we've all worked with that person who seems like they're super flaky and hasn't been responding to things, but that's because they have a lot going on. And I like to say to like people that I'm working with, I'm like, if you just let me know like what's up, that's fine. Like then we can kind of work with it. Like I mean, this is a our relationship is a great example. On and off is a great example right now. I'm
Mhm.
This is the only thing I'm doing for on and off right now because I have a baby and my brain is overloaded. And I literally cannot spend more than 30 minutes a week on and off right now.
And
But
we
if
love you and we
I
appreciate your time.
thank you and I love you very much and I miss everyone. But like if I was straight up like just bailing on you all the
Mhm.
time, Shannon, and wasn't clear about my expectations and like what I'm able to do right now, then oh, that that would be painful. Like that would be awful.
That's a great example. It's a great example. We people really tend to push through something that is hindering them, like being pregnant, having a broken bone, being sick, being somehow being unable to do the thing that they used to do, but
Mhm.
have set an expectation that they can do it, right? Like, oh, I used to be able to work 8 hours a day, but for reasons that are in my private life, I can't do that, but I'm still going to try to keep working 8 hours a day. And that thing starts to crumble, right?
Mhm.
And I'm thinking we were talking recently sort of about oh, you being a physical improviser.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And then being like, well, now I'm pregnant and I can't be as physical as I can, as I was. um and it can really just sort, if you don't tell anybody that, and they are expecting you to jump on their back, or for them to be able to jump on your back, or whatever
Mhm.
it is that they're expecting, and you don't tell them. Now we've got this whole dynamic, right? I
Mhm.
see a thumbs
Mhm.
up. Thanks for being here. Put in the chat all the things you want to say. um yeah, if you don't tell people, if you don't share that with people, man, it does, you start to feel unreliable. Other people don't know why you're unreliable, and it can really take twists and turns.
Yeah,
I
and it can
think,
really
yeah.
cause a lot of problems, right?
Mhm.
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 I
Improv really helps us to s- taking improv classes. Go take an improv class. And but it helps us to learn that we need to speak every moment. We need to, like, everything that's up here. Well,
well,
just.
and that but then on the flip side
Mhm.
too, the people that you're speaking to, or if you were the kind of person who is hearing those things, we also need to be accepting of those things. I mean, who hasn't worked for that boss that is like, no excuses, you know? Uh, there's very rigid in what they expect out of their
Mhm.
employees or their schedules. Um, and I found people in helping professions, like I've been in a helping profession,
Mhm.
sometimes the people who are at the top who have they have busted their butt and maybe had not such a great work-life balance And then when you come to them saying, hey, this is what's going on. I need to step back from this responsibility, or I need to do XYZ. There's a lot of like, what? You want to take time for you? I work 80-hour work weeks. So why can't you do that thing? And so I think that's important too, if you're the person who is hearing the things, to be flexible about maybe what you do or what
Right.
you value is not the same as the person who's
That's what
coming to
other
you.
people value. Ooh, ooh, Emily, you're speaking truth. You're preaching the truth. How do you make room for the unreliable? I in that scenario,
Mhm.
I feel like unreliable also, um, well, it is. It's surprise, right?
Mhm.
When we think something like that, like you know what, I'm going to go in today and I'm going to say, I really need a break. Take some vacation, and the response you get is, no, you can't. Did it? No, 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 no. Right?
Mhm.
We can get to a space where we think, oh, well, I guess that's it. That's it. I asked for my blank. I wasn't expecting a no. And now I have no other choices. I think improv really helps us to know that there are so very many choices that we can take, right? Or
Mhm.
and we can make. There are so many different avenues that a story can go. And our job is to explore those avenues until our partners latch on with us,
Yeah.
right? So that idea of going in, asking for something you need, maybe being rejected, and not stopping there. Like, okay, well, what does my partner need? In this case, your partner being your manager or whatnot. What does my partner need? When they say no, what do they actually mean? Do they mean no, never, never take a break ever? They can't possibly mean that. Okay, let's see if what are some other
Yeah.
avenues I can take.
Yeah. And I think it, because it helps you not be mad too, right?
For real.
Because even if your manager really does mean like, nope, you can't take this thing that you asked for. You can't do that thing that you asked for. Um, I think improv and that room for the unreliable and surprises, first of all, helps us have a little bit of empathy, right? In that example that I just gave, being able to think about like, well, this is the kind of person that works very
Mm-hmm.
hard and doesn't has difficulty understanding why someone would want to have some
Right.
work-life balance. Or I also work in a field where we're down staff all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so empathy for like, I understand why this is difficult because we're, staffing is tight. Um, and I think in trying to problem solve a way to help the people around you and also help yourself, it stops us from getting angry. If we
Mm-hmm.
see these people as our scene partners and not just um, people who we're opposing.
Right. Yes. When I think about that, it makes me think about making those decisions in the moment on stage. What is my I'm giving an offer to my partner. My partner is saying no in so many words. Maybe they're not saying no, but I am saying like, wow, look at these vines. And they're like, I'm making soup. Okay. All right. Great. Do you
Sure,
need some
okay.
vines for your soup? I hate vine soup. I'm gonna use it's like, all right, something is happening where my partner doesn't want to acknowledge this thing. How can I what are some other options here?
Mhm,
What empathy, that's what you're talking about. How do
mhm.
I empathize with those choices so that our story can continue and we're still working together to build that story.
Right. Absolutely. Perfect.
So,
Beautiful.
did Emily
Hey,
says, listen, we're at 30-30.
we're at 30-30. Speaking of unexpected,
Mhm.
someone's
Someone
someone's got to go
has
take
to
care of a
get
baby.
out of here. Listen, friends, I don't even know what to tell you. When you're making choices, when you're out there being reliable or unreliable, make room for the unreliable because it's going to
Be
happen.
flexible.
Be flexible. Be
Expect
flexible.
expect the unexpected and prepare for the expected, but expect the unexpected.
I love
Yeah.
it. Do that on and
Off the stage. Bye.
bye.